it is expected that China will most likely retaliate in the face of these tariffs from both the US and the EU, and they will make their own tariffs to counteract what the US and the EU have been doing. Now, of course, following the 100% tariffs from the US, the EU has followed suit, adding this up to 30% tariff. On top of that, there's 10% import tax. So adding all that up, you're paying up to 50% extra, all right, just for a vehicle built from China. And this really shows two main important points. The number one point is that the EU and the US feel that they can no longer compete. All right, they see the competitiveness of Chinese EV vehicles, and they see that their cars are way too good, and they can make their cars good at such a cheap price that if their cars were to flow into the EU or the US, it would significantly hurt the domestic brands like, I don't know, Cadillac, BMW, etc. And that would be catastrophic in terms of the economy, because their sales go down. BMW has to, lower prices, cut jobs. The economy just goes to shit. So that's what they think, okay? But by doing so, you're really, tilting the balance of trade, and it's something that China definitely won't allow. It's not going to let this slide by. So what you're going to see is definitely China is going to do something about this, okay? Whether it's with import taxes, likewise, right? You're not allowing our company to earn money abroad in the EU, but why should we let your EU companies earn more money here in China, right? So China already has these very expensive import taxes, especially if you're a gasoline vehicle. So for example, if you want to buy an Aston Martin or Ferrari, you're going to be paying 2 to 3 times more than what you're going to pay in the US. Yeah, it's that much more expensive. And we also saw maybe 5-6 years ago, if you wanted to buy a Tesla Model X, 50% of the price was taxes, all right? Just import taxes here in China. So China could really do it two ways, and they're going to definitely act on this. The first way is to increase taxes on imports, which I think is the most likely thing that they will do. So for example, Cadillac cars or BMW, Audi, all these cars that's being shipped in, and not built domestically here in China, being shipped in from abroad, higher taxes on those cars, which will be the most likely outcome. Now this, of course, will have the benefit of helping people buy more domestic vehicles. Right? Your BMW cars have gotten more expensive. Your Audi cars more expensive. Cadillac cars more expensive. The luxury cars have gotten more expensive. Whereas NIO's vehicles, well, it's still the same price here in China. So this is definitely going to help NIO in that sense, that customers are basically going to be priced out of these other international brands and be forced to buy a NIO because, well, the products are better, but it's also cheaper. Well, those other guys are more expensive. Okay? And you also got to remember that there's recently been also the Japanese automobile scandals, right? All these Japanese automakers faking their safety tests and all that kind of stuff. Whereas NIO, you see NIO has 5-star safety rating and all that kind of great stuff. EU NCAP tested, all right, 5-star safety. It's just basically the safest car that you can buy. Whereas the Japanese cars, they've been faking it and they had to publicly apologize. So what you're seeing is people are losing trust with these international brands. The German ones and American ones are getting more expensive. The Japanese ones, you don't really trust it. There's also the patriotic sentiment that, Japan and what they did during World War II, maybe we shouldn't really buy their cars, even though my dad drives, even though they used to be very reliable, fantastic vehicles. But that's just what's going on, okay? So this is the first thing that they might do in retaliation. Number 2 is imposing more taxes, import taxes on parts, all right? So the EU does have a lot of these part makers, Bosch, etc., and they sell these parts here in China, and China could totally just jack up the price of the tariffs on these parts. And if they do so, that's actually not really going to help the whole entire businesses here in China, right? It's going to really make the cars more expensive. Some automakers here in China still rely heavily on Bosch, etc. Some of the like regen system, the cars some might still use the iBooster regen systems, etc., or Bosch brakes, suspension, etc. It's going to make the cars a lot more expensive, and that definitely isn't the way to go. So really, the only way for China to retaliate is to just likewise increase these import taxes on the foreign-made vehicles. And that just inadvertently helps domestic brands here in China nonetheless. So what you're seeing is Chinese automakers are suffering with lower sales abroad, all right, because of these increased tariffs. But likewise, you're going to see that retaliation take effect, and then these foreign international brands are going to see less sales here in China because of, the retaliation. Now, what I really want to see, all right, is a increase in taxes or a tariff on foreign brands here in China, because it doesn't really make sense that America doesn't really allow NIO to sell in the US, whereas China is allowing Tesla to sell here in China. And in fact, Tesla is the best-selling car brand, SUV, here in China. All right, period. How is that allowed? All right, we're open to tech from the US, but US is not open to tech from China. So what I think China should really do is just impose a foreign company tax, all right, foreign company tariff on Apple, on Tesla, stuff like that, companies like those, all right, because, it's just they're not allowing Huawei, all these companies to sell in the US. Why should we allow them to sell here in China, right? And what this is going to do is, if they really do this tax, all right, a foreign company tax, make Teslas a lot more expensive, or make iPhones more expensive, people will still buy them, all right? People will still buy them, but of course, business is going to shift towards these domestic companies like NIO, all right, like Huawei, etc. So this is definitely something that the government should really be doing. And there's such a double standard going on. The U.S. is very happy to have Apple and Tesla sell in China, and they're best sellers, the biggest companies with the most sales here in China, some of the biggest markets out there. But Chinese companies can't sell in the U.S. What kind of double standard is this bullshit, right? So it's quite unfair, and I would really love to see the Chinese government impose a sort of a tariff on Tesla, just to make sure that the government earns some money, right? And since Chinese EVs can't be sold in the U.S., why should we allow them to be sold here in China? Right? So we'll have to see how they retaliate. It's probably more likely import taxes. Like, that's going to make Tesla's Model X and S much more expensive, and even Cybertruck. I've seen the Cybertruck here in China many times, not on the road, of course, but in shopping malls, etc. They're displaying the car, but that's going to be very unobtainable, because that's going to be much more expensive if they do this retaliation import tax, which I am expecting them to do. They will not just let this slide, okay? And China will not let this slide. What do you think about the double standard? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.